tell our audience a little about yourself and Aunt Zelda and how you ended up in the cannabis industry.
First of all, thank you so much for asking me to participate in this. I appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure.
Always happy to share in good information about the cannabis industry and how it can help people. I initially got into this because I was a patient and I was looking for solutions to my own suffering. I was on 26 pharmaceuticals and was completely debilitated, and just knew there had to be more to life than what I was experiencing. A good friend of mine up in Oregon said, well, you know, I make pot brownies for my boyfriend who has a bad neck. You know, maybe you should try some brownies. And so the first thing I did was go around to various dispensaries trying to find, you know, after I investigated and tried to find some good consistent medicine, and I couldn't. So I went back and got a couple of ounces of XXX ChemDog and made myself, ground it up and infused it into some olive oil. Well, excuse me, initially I was using canola oil. I made myself my Aunt Zelda's carrot cake because it had a lot of oil in it. And so I started out with doing the carrot cake, and that was my first medicine. Aunt Zelda's was because of the carrot cake, and also because my Aunt Zelda suffered from disorders that would have been helped so much by cannabis and ended up dying from doctor's error from giving her too much sedative.
That's really unfortunate.
Right. So anyway, my husband also at the same time was looking for some solutions because he had to have back surgery, and he is a sober alcoholic and was unwilling to go on opiates. And so after looking around and investigating and talking to professionals, he decided to try cannabis, and it did not cause the phenomenon of craving, so he was able to use it and successfully have the surgery that he needed for his broken back.
Oh, that's amazing. Such a versatile medicine.
Absolutely. We have been working on creating specific dosing protocols for different diseases and for different types of patients. My background as a process engineer is all about data and all looking for patterns and trying to figure out the best way to solve different dilemmas. And one thing that I recognized pretty early was that the notion of a gram a day or 60 grams in 90 days didn't make any sense. It was a ridiculous protocol to expect there to be a one-size-fits-all. So we were doing very in-depth patient intake, 10-page form, like if you were going to a specialist, and we go through and we have medical professionals who work alongside us to help with the patient intake so that we can make the best recommendation. We then follow very, very closely with the patient to give them specific dosing protocols down to the milligram, and then follow them very closely. I spend most of my time talking with patients, just talking with patients and going over their medical, reviewing it with the doctors, and then helping to make the recommendations on the medicine.
I wish more states would embrace that kind of medical system where, the doctors have a little more freedom to actually, get to know the patient, get to know the plant, and rather than just kind of, be subject to these regulations where, I've heard horror stories about, the system that's being proposed in Florida, and, New York obviously gets a lot of criticism as well. So it sounds like, the type of treatment and service you provide is really, patient-driven and patient-focused, and unfortunately, a lot of the medical laws that I've seen come up don't seem to have that same spirit.
Right, and in California is no different. California does not create an environment where the doctors are able to participate other than just writing the initial recommendation. So what we did is we started a separate consulting company that the doctors actually work for that company and they are acting as advisors on the actual medical conditions, on the nutritional supplements, on the the things that they need to do, and then have to do an actual handoff to us to make the actual dosing recommendation specifically. But the doctor is part of the entire process. The doctor does follow up as well as we do. I have an interesting example. We have Dr. Joe Goldstrich, who is our medical director for Calispring Wellness, which is our medical company. And I don't know, the consulting company for the medical professionals, let's put it that way. And
Okay.
we had an intake with a patient who had esophageal cancer. And, we talk about how we have everybody take their medicine sublingual or buccal on the cheek. And he contacted me after the call, and he said, I think it might be beneficial if we mix some of the extract in with some like almond butter or something, and then have him eat it so that it actually will kind of stick and bathe the esophagus. It's like, that's a great idea. That's a wonderful idea. And I think that the input of having somebody like a doctor to give that it makes the patient feel far more confident in their treatment plan, and it's not as frightening, especially since we specialize in pediatric cancers.
Right.
And it gives the parents a whole lot of reassurance to know that their children are being looked out for, not only by us, where we make all our own medicines and we know the conditions and they're sanitary and everything. They also are being overseen by a medical professional as well.
It sounds like you're offering really innovative treatment solutions and, really setting a new standard as far as healthcare. And it's exciting to see cannabis be, to help, drive that kind of innovation and can hopefully, transform the healthcare industry at large. I want to ask you though about, as an entrepreneur, what's a failure or setback that you've encountered in this space that's been a learning experience for you?
Well, I like to look at mistakes and failures as just, steps on the learning curve, because without them we learn nothing. We think
Absolutely.
we're and but one of the early on things was going back to my Aunt Zelda's carrot cake. We were making, I was making so many cakes, and I was having to dose them. It's very difficult to dose an edible correctly. I was doing a good job. I have some tricks. My father was a baker, so I have some tricks that I knew.
Mm-hmm.
But I wasn't empowering people with their medicine the same way. I was giving them, like, here's a piece of carrot cake. It has X number of milligrams in it. Eat it, and it'll help you sleep, whatever.
Right.
But somebody said to me, why are you building everybody a house? Better you should supply the lumber. Let their own house. And it made perfect sense because initially we were only doing infused oils. Before we started having serious cancer patients come to us and also add in doing the extracts, the concentrates, and things like that. But at first it was like it was such a big mistake to think that I could scale. There would be no way to scale carrot cake and have it be. I mean, it's just too labor intensive. It's just too complex of a thing to be able to bake these cakes, weigh each piece to have the exact dosing of the milligrams of the actual oil that's in it, and then specifically tell somebody which piece they need to take. It was not a model to build a business around.
Right.
People loved what we were doing because of our medical approach, but they didn't love the solution. And so by simply saying, here, I'm going to give you a bottle of oil, and then you're going to use that, however you'd intend to use it, was far more practical and scalable.
It just goes to show you that you could have a great product or service where you're providing, value to your customer base, but if your processes don't allow you to scale, then you can't build a business. So, and that's something that is a common challenge for entrepreneurs, whether in cannabis and tech or any other industry. So I
Right.
guess along those lines, I'm wondering, what advice do you have for aspiring cannabis entrepreneurs?
I would say find what your passion is in the space and then stay in that space. You know, the cannabis industry is like saying it affects every part of the gross domestic product. It's the food industry, it's the building industry, it's the medicine, it's and then all the peripheral industries around it. It's so enormous
Mm-hmm.
that when somebody says, "Oh, I can do that, I can do that, I can do that," and then they end up doing nothing well. So find what your passion and what your niche is. Surround yourself with other people that have the same passion and stick with it. Just stick with it. Don't try to do everything because once somebody learns that you're in this industry, they're going to come to you with so many different opportunities and different things, and if you get sidelined on all of them, you'll end up doing nothing well.
The advice you just gave is one that I hear all the time from my mentors, is just focus on your one thing and, build from there. So
Yeah.
I love that advice. What are you most excited about for this next year for the cannabis industry?
Well, I'm very, very excited about how many people from different walks of life all over the world are saying, "Hey, yes, hear my voice. I am a voice in favor of cannabis as medicine." I'm very excited about. I mean, I'm pretty straight. I mean, I'm a pretty and I don't mean that. I mean that in the sense of the cannabis world. I still like to have a glass of red wine at night to recreate. I don't recreate.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that there's more and more people out there that see this as a legitimate medicine and not harping on their rights because it's a plant. I mean, seriously, because that's an argument. You could say the same thing about poppies. They're just a plant too, but
Right.
nobody's shouldn't regulate. Well, actually, some people do say that we shouldn't regulate any medicines or any drugs, but I don't happen to fit in that space. So I'm
Okay.
very excited. I mean, I read about one of our patients who's, in Utah, and she's absolutely a solid Mormon, 100% committed, and yet she sees that cannabis is saving her life.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that she would even consider this as a medicine is something in 2015 that I would not have seen in 2010. No
Right.
way.
Wow. On the flip side, what's something that concerns you about where the industry is going?
One of the things that concerns me is the CBD only legislation. I think that it's dangerous and it's being promoted by people who are seeing this as ways to make money and not a way of helping people.
Mm-hmm.
So that really concerns me a lot. It also concerns me that the medicine that most people have access to is untested and
Mm-hmm.
inconsistent, and it has heavy metals, it has pesticides, it has solvents that are dangerous, that are not, the quality of the medicine is so inconsistent throughout the U.S. and the world that that's a huge concern. Because to have somebody's first experience with this be negative because of whatever, you not only lose them as an ally, you turn them into somebody against the industry.
What can the medical community do to better, to make sure quality control and research and I don't know, compliance and all these other standards are at a place that creates consistent, safe, effective medicine?
First thing is obviously we have to have standards of what is acceptable and what is not.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there should be serious limitations on what sorts of solvents can be used in processing. I think that the lab testing is the most important element in everything that we do. We've been testing since the very beginning when we started, and I think that having qualified, well calibrated lab equipment and labs being in charge of testing. I mean, nothing should be able to get to a patient until it's been tested.
Right.
And then, of course, setting up what does it mean to have it be a pass or fail in the testing. We must start teaching about the endocannabinoid system in medical school. That is absolutely the number one. I mean, some of the things that I hear from doctors that have not been exposed to this before are so antiquated, and I think to myself, you know, this is 2015, you know, and you're a young man, why don't you know this? You know, why were you not exposed to this in college or in medical school?
What's something that you wish medical professionals would do, you know, specifically those who don't know much about cannabis as a medicine? What's something you wish they would do to, you know, better educate themselves?
I think that there's a tremendous amount of literature out there already and studies that have been done. You have organizations like Patients Out of Time that is for medical professionals. You have the Society of Cannabis Clinicians. You have the American Cannabis Nurses Association. I mean, there are places where if they are interested, they can learn about the medicine. The other thing is be open, to be more open to communication with their patients and let them know that they want to know that their patients are using this. One of the questions on our patient intake form is, does your doctor know that you are using cannabis as part of your treatment? And I am just shocked at what some people write, you know. I mean, I'm not really shocked anymore, but I find it shocking that these people, they act like they're afraid to tell their doctor. And it's crazy. If the doctor wants to be a true healer, they need to be open to understanding what their patient is going through, and cannabis is a legitimate part of their treatment.
People who support cannabis culture, who, you know, are pro-legalization or pro-medical cannabis, what's something they can do to better serve the movement?
Well, one of the things they can do is they can come out of hiding. They could stop being guerrilla growers out in the boondocks where they don't let anybody know what they're doing. They can start paying taxes. They can start showing that they want to be part of a society in a positive manner. So that's one thing. I have to tell you, that answer came from our extraction specialist who was a grower. He was living kind of in the shadows for a long time. And he's very, very happy to now be out in the light. So that's one of the very important things to do. The other thing is, when I tell your doctor what you're doing, make sure your doctor understands. You know, you have the right to do it. You know, you don't have to have permission from your doctor. You have a right to use cannabis as medicine.
What's something that you wish people who are completely outside cannabis culture, who don't know anything about the plant, what's something you wish they knew?
I wish they knew that the very worst thing that can possibly happen if somebody uses cannabis is better than what can happen with any other medicine out there. The only person I think who's ever died is when there was a wreck and I think bales of cannabis fell on them and crushed them. You know, it's kind of an old joke. I mean, part of your brain that actually would cause a person to overdose there are no receptor sites there, so you cannot overdose. It is impossible to overdose on cannabis. Don't be afraid of the media. Don't listen to what, you know, it's all scare tactics, and understand that this is a legitimate medicine when used correctly.
Mara, I have to thank you so much for sharing all the wisdom and education with me and with our audience. I'm grateful that you took the time to join us today. I'm wondering if you have any parting thoughts or anything you want to share before we hop off.
I would say that the only thing that I would say is I'm looking forward to New York being on the bandwagon as far as, you know, patient care, and I think that the more people that we can get doing things like you're doing and getting the message out in a positive manner, the better. And we're here to support anybody who wants to get in this and wants some help. We're here for them.